Yeah, so I think to sort of zoom out on that question a little bit, I did this thing years ago. Actually, it was when I was applying for that program I mentioned, where I sort of laid out my career on a timeline, and like
Nice.
it
I
sort of
saw
showed
it.
showed just various things that I've done. And what I realized after a while, because I was still using it to show to like prospective employers, was that it might have not been the best thing to share because it sort of just seemed like I had a short attention span. It was like jumping around to all these different weird things. And I think that's probably true to some degree, but also I just, I really like learning new things. And so, with the physical product thing, not that I had mastered it by a long shot. I think you could spend a lifetime doing that, but I'd learned a lot and I felt like I was ready for something different. And, hence the bounce over to marine science for a bit and then into magazines, et cetera. And I'm still learning. And in my current role is the first time where I've not been really kind of creating something like either a product or like a digital or physical product to ship out to the world, but rather it's more, content essentially, books and podcasts, et cetera. And I found I really enjoyed that. And, I want to continue, I think, doing that for a while. And not that I wouldn't go back to the product world, but there are certain things about that world that I personally find quite stressful that you don't necessarily have when you're working on a podcast or even writing a book. It's just like the things that can go wrong, the dependencies, all those things. I'm glad I went through it. I'm glad I did it for a long time. And maybe at some point I would go back to it. But yeah, I'm definitely enjoying being more on the sort of teaching and content side of things.
Yeah. So, I've got a question, and it's in some ways a little bit of a selfish question. And it's like that transition when you went from specifically building products to more focusing on creating content around the process. Like, what did that look like for you? Because in some ways, those are two very different jobs. Like going from designing things
Yep.
to talking about designing things. Like
Right.
the
Yeah.
activities involved are very different.
They are
Yeah,
very
Alfie
different.
just
Can you
wants
talk a
to
little bit
quit his
about what
job.
I hear you.
This is not me asking for an instruction manual to follow.
Asking
Share
for a
footsteps.
friend and myself.
Right.
Exactly.
No, definitely. I think, they are very different. And I think, given that you've had experience in the design world, I think the challenging thing that I see maybe some younger designers do, and I don't see this often, but is maybe like jump straight into the content side of things. I think you do need some grounding and actually having gone through the various processes and more than just in an academic setting to really have empathy for the people that are doing it. And I don't think it's not that it's not possible, but I think it's really helpful if you had some, real world experience
Yeah.
in these fields. But the activities are different. But there are some interesting, overlaps. And one of the things, this is another thing that I mentioned in my podcast interview yesterday, but we've had a couple times the great honor of having Sir Johnny Ive, in our class at Stanford,
Wow.
and then once virtually and once in person. And
Sure.
one of the things that he said that was to me very surprising was that he starts all of his projects with writing at Apple and now. And the reason he does that is because I'm sure he's very adept at sketching, but he feels that it's too constraining and that when you're in the very early stages of a product,
That's very interesting.
if you can write about it and convey some of the emotion that you want to imbue the product with, that's a very important aspect of things. And that I didn't really start writing for work until this current role, but then I realized that wow, there's some real power here if you can if you can include writing as a fundamental part of your process. That really opens some doors. And so I think there is that overlap between being a content creator and being a designer. The written word, the spoken word, those kind of skills will suit you well if you can get some practice with both.